For a long time, she believed that strength meant endurance, that if something was difficult but familiar, it deserved loyalty. She had learned early to stay composed, to adjust, to carry responsibility without asking whether it was ever meant to be hers alone. Her life looked balanced from the outside, even admirable. Inside, it felt carefully managed, like a room kept tidy while the windows stayed closed. She was praised for how well she handled things, for how calm she remained under pressure, for how rarely she complained. Those compliments shaped her identity. She learned to associate worth with composure, maturity with restraint. Expressing discomfort felt unnecessary, even indulgent. She told herself that everyone carried something and that her ability to manage quietly was a sign of growth. Her days followed a rhythm she rarely questioned. Wake up early. Prepare breakfast without thinking. Answer messages efficiently. Work through tasks with calm precision. She was good at being reliable. People described her as grounded, thoughtful, dependable. She accepted those labels without resistance, even pride. Stability, she believed, was something you protected at all costs. At work, she was trusted implicitly. She anticipated needs before they were voiced. She smoothed complications before they became visible. Her competence made life easier for others, and that usefulness felt validating. Being needed gave her structure, purpose, direction. She rarely asked whether the constant readiness cost her something internally. Yet beneath the structure lived a quiet fatigue. Not exhaustion from overwork, but from emotional vigilance. From always being the one who noticed shifts in tone, who sensed unspoken tension, who adjusted herself to maintain equilibrium. She didn't resent it. It simply felt natural, as if attentiveness were her default state rather than a choice. There were moments, usually late at night, when she sensed something missing. Not a person, not excitement, something less defined, a sense of inner expansion that never quite arrived. She would sit in silence, scrolling absent-mindedly or staring at the ceiling, feeling neither sad nor fulfilled. She told herself that adulthood was about responsibility, not intensity. That contentment was subtle, not dramatic. Her relationships reflected that belief. They were steady, functional, rarely chaotic. She chose partners who felt safe, predictable, reasonable. Emotional conversations stayed controlled. Conflict was avoided through compromise. She learned to interpret her own needs as negotiable, flexible, secondary to harmony. She prided herself on being understanding, on not demanding too much, on adapting when circumstances shifted. If something felt off, she searched for context, explanations, external pressures. She rarely asked whether a dynamic felt nourishing. The question seemed too abstract, too self-focused. It took time for the realization to surface, because nothing was overtly wrong. There were no betrayals, no explosions, no obvious losses. Just a gradual dimming of her inner voice. She noticed how often she postponed decisions. How frequently she said it's fine when it wasn't entirely true. How rarely she felt fully present, even during moments that were supposed to matter. The awareness didn't arrive all at once. It appeared in fragments. A conversation that left her unusually drained. A quiet afternoon that felt heavier than it should have. A sudden wave of relief when plans were canceled. She began paying attention to those reactions, curious rather than alarmed. She noticed her body reacting before her mind did. A tightening in her chest during certain conversations. A subtle heaviness before responding to messages. Relief in solitude that surprised her. These sensations didn't accuse. They simply informed. She started writing again. Something she hadn't done since she was younger. Not for an audience. Just for herself. Pages filled with observations instead of explanations. She described sensations, not conclusions. Tightness in her chest. A persistent restlessness. A longing she couldn't yet name. Through writing, she noticed a pattern. She was constantly adapting to external expectations while neglecting internal signals. She had learned how to be emotionally available without being emotionally honest. She had mastered patience, but rarely practiced assertion. This realization wasn't painful at first. It was clarifying, like adjusting focus on a camera and realizing the image had been slightly blurred all along. Nothing in the frame had changed, only her ability to see it clearly. She didn't make immediate changes. She wasn't interested in dramatic declarations or abrupt endings. Instead, she experimented quietly. She declined invitations without justification. She allowed pauses in conversation. She stopped filling silence automatically. Each small shift felt unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, but also strangely relieving. At first, guilt surfaced, a reflexive concern that she was being selfish, distant, unkind. But the guilt softened when nothing collapsed. Relationships adjusted. Some conversations deepened. Others grew quieter. Both outcomes felt honest. Her body responded before her thoughts fully caught up. Sleep deepened. Breathing slowed. Mornings felt less rushed. She noticed how much energy had been spent anticipating reactions rather than inhabiting moments. Presence felt spacious, not empty. As weeks passed, she reevaluated her understanding of care. She had equated love with attentiveness, commitment with accommodation. But she began to see how easily those qualities could drift into self-erasure if left unexamined. She reflected on past relationships with compassion rather than regret. She hadn't been naive. She had been hopeful. She had believed that harmony was created through flexibility. That belief had kept her safe, but also contained. Conversations with friends changed subtly. She spoke more honestly, without softening every edge. She admitted uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. To her surprise, the world didn't fracture. People leaned in rather than away. Authenticity created connection, not distance. She spent more time alone, not out of withdrawal but curiosity. Walks became longer. Music played without multitasking. She noticed how often she had lived slightly ahead of herself, planning responses instead of experiencing sensations. Stillness revealed what constant adjustment had hidden. There were moments of doubt, moments when solitude felt unfamiliar, when old habits tempted her to re-enter familiar patterns. But clarity, once recognized, didn't fully disappear. It lingered quietly, patient, trustworthy. Gradually, her sense of self expanded. Not dramatically, quietly. She felt more aligned with her own pace, less compelled to prove emotional maturity through endurance. She learned that boundaries weren't barriers, they were definitions. She began making choices based on internal resonance rather than obligation. Saying yes when it felt expansive. Saying no when something tightened her chest. Each decision reinforced a growing trust in herself. The most unexpected change was gentleness toward herself. She stopped narrating her life through obligation. She allowed rest without justification, desire without strategy, curiosity without outcome. Looking back, she realized that nothing external had forced this shift. No crisis had demanded transformation. It was awareness, sustained over time, that reshaped her life. The courage wasn't in leaving something behind. It was in staying present long enough to notice what was missing. She no longer measured fulfillment by stability alone. She measured it by internal quiet, by the absence of tension she had once mistaken for responsibility, by the ease of being herself without constant calibration. This wasn't an ending. It was a recalibration, a return to herself that didn't require loss to feel earned. And in that return, she discovered a different kind of strength, one that didn't rely on endurance but on truth.